depression?
What is it?
Depression is a serious mental health problem that causes a persistent feeling of sadness and loss of interest. It affects how people think, feel, and behave, and can lead to a variety of emotional and physical problems.
Depression can occur at any age, however, most teens and adults show different symptoms of depression.
What are the symptoms?
Teens tend to feel sad, angry, and irritable. Some other symptoms and changes that teens tend to face are tiredness, lack of caring, change in sleep, weight change, use of alcohol or drugs, and frequent thoughts of suicide.
Rates of teenage depression have been rising. From 2007 to 2015, depression in kids aged 12 to 17 has raised from 8.7 to 12.7%.
Dang.
There are many theories for this increase, but no definitive answers. One explanation of depression is the biology, which is made of three components: brain structure, neurotransmitters, and genetics. Parts of the brain have been identified as having an effect on depression, specifically the forebrain and the limbic system. This is an evolutionarily newer part of the brain that is associated with motor functions, relaying sensory information, and autonomic functions. The thalamus is part of the brain that is associated with sensory relay, or the sorting of sensory information into different parts of the brain. This can affect bipolar disorder and depression by misinterpreting information as positive or negative. The hippocampus is part of the brain that is associated with memories, facts, and knowledge. Stress hormones may impair the growth of nerve cells in the amygdala, making it smaller in people with depression. Amygdala is part of the brain that is associated with fear and aggression. Activity is increased when people are sad or clinically depressed. Transmitters are chemicals that transmit information to neurons or nerve cells. Neurotransmitters are associated with the regulation of mood and are hypothesized to play a large role in depression. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter associated with dreaming and regulating emotional states, such as anger, anxiety, and sadness. Lower levels are associated with depression. In a recent study, people with shorter serotonin transport genes had higher rates of depression. Dopamine is the feel-good neurotransmitter. It is associated with motivation and people's perception of reality as it provides an internal reward system. Problems with dopamine are thought to cause psychosis and can play a large role in substance abuse. These roles are connected with dopamine's association with depression. Genes influence mood and mood disorders. They can have an influence on neurotransmitters and brain structure. Directly related to someone with major depression have a 1.5 to 3% increased risk of getting the condition. The chance of depression in occurrence with a stressful life event is increased for people who are genetically at risk for depression. People have a genetic predisposition to depression, but not all of them will be depressed in their life. Biology of the brain and genetic inheritance provides one explanation for depression. However, the biology of teenagers is not changing, so rising depression rates are most likely correlated with sociocultural or cognitive changes.
People with depression are believed to have it because of selective attention, which is focusing on only negative aspects of a situation, or magnification, which is exaggerating the negative parts of life events. And finally, overgeneralization, which is drawing broad conclusions about a negative life event. A researcher known as Aaron Beck identified 3 components that he believed to be responsible for depression. The theory of his consists of negative self-schemas, the cognitive triad, and errors in logic. Schemas in general are collections of basic information that allow us to interpret the world around us. Negative schemas, however, are thoughts that humans believe to be true about themselves that tend to be self-deprecating and negative. The cognitive triad is made up of negative thoughts of oneself, the world, and the future. Logical errors can be defined as faulty thinking or a lot of negative thoughts.
There are many different factors that contribute to teen depression. However, one big factor is social media and its influence today. Why do you think teen depression rates have increased in the last decade?
I think that it has increased because the use of social media. Teens are comparing themselves to all these influencers and models, and that can really affect one's mental health.
The increased use of social media by adolescents like Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter has almost simultaneously grown with increased depression rates in teens.
I think that depression has risen in teens over the last decade because the advent of both social media and just mass communications has led to people being exposed to really negative things all around the world pretty much constantly, and it's really demoralizing to hear virtually nothing on something like your phone that you look at 24/7. You hear virtually nothing except violence and death and just horrible things. It's really sad.
Researchers have concluded that a big part of teen depression and its correlation with social media use is people who connect with others online and not in person.
Well, not being able to be happy, which is, kind of, and just not being able to like truly fix it on your own will.
I think depression is a mental disorder with long periods of saddened moods and no motivation to do anything.
There's evidence that social media users who form connections online are less emotionally satisfied, leaving them feeling socially isolated.
I think depression is a feeling of intense sadness and dejection, and just kind of like the inability to fulfill like the requirements that like make a person a person. Like being able to go through just like everyday tasks without like feeling like dread and sadness and a feeling of that you're pathetic.
Conducted in 2017 with over 500,000 students between 8th and 12th grade who showed depressive symptoms increased by 33% between 2010 and 2015. This study between the same period also found that suicide rates for teen girls increased by 65%. Social media isn't just used for people to connect with others online. It's used to see what's happening around the world, for politics, to see what your friends are doing, to see funny videos and memes, and more. Well, it's definitely hard to ignore the correlation between teen depression and social media use, but these platforms and its influence are used in many different ways. For example, 2 people could be using social media for 2 to 3 hours, and one person could be using these 2 hours to look at memes or funny videos, and the other person could be reading hate comments and looking at other people.
Mental illness caused by many things. It consists of constantly feeling lonely or feeling like you're not worth the life you're living.
What do you think can be done about these increasing rates?
I think that counselors should be more available for students to talk to so that it's a more open environment and they feel more comfortable. I also think that social media should have some restrictions. I know Instagram just recently took off the likes, so you can't see how many likes a person got, and that can help in teens comparing themselves to others.
What do you think can be done to help reduce the increasing rates of teen depression?
Teen depression is mostly caused by like stress levels or bullying going around at schools and places around you. So minimizing the amount of schoolwork that we have could cut down on the stress, which would cut down on the rate of depression, as well as controlling social media sites.
Thing would be to reduce the stigma around it. I guess that I feel like a lot of people, this is kind of stereotypical, but a lot of people feel like it's not okay to say that, hey, I'm depressed, or they feel like their feelings aren't valid, or that they're not depressed enough, which is of course ridiculous. And I think that just kind of raising awareness of there are different levels, and you can be depressed and not look depressed, and all that kind of stuff can really make it a little bit easier to reach out.
One of the biggest symptoms of depression is feeling worthless, like you're not enough, like you're not worth enough, or you don't matter to anyone, but you do. You're loved, everyone's loved, and you're not alone. Depression is a real mental disorder. It's a real mental health issue that people deal with on a regular basis, every day. But it's not forever. You can get treated, you can get help, and it's never too late to ask for help or to reach out to somebody. You're not alone. You can also visit or consult a doctor or a medical professional, and don't be afraid to go to therapy or ask for help, because you can be treated. That's another thing. Don't be afraid to reach out to someone, to a loved one, to your friends. And if you know anyone who you think might be depressed or are showing depressive symptoms, just be there for them. Be a good listener and be a good friend. Show them that you care.